And I'd like to welcome our guest this evening, who is Marcel Gagne. Marcel Gagne is well known for his Cooking with Linux column that was in Linux Journal, back when Linux Journal was roaming the earth in the paper formats and such. It was always a pleasure to read that column. He's also done several books like Moving to Ubuntu, Moving to Linux. I'm going off the top of my head, so if I say anything weird, let me know, please. He's also been a DJ in a previous life. He writes science fiction and stuff, and his blog is fantastic if you want to think very deeply about complex topics, for which he will no doubt let us know about. So with that, I would like to introduce my good friend, Marcel Gagne.
Oh, thanks, Craig. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Is this thing on? Well, it's great to be here again. I don't know. I think this is like the 5th or 6th time that I've done Mug. At least 3 times I did it actually in Michigan, which feels like so long ago and so far away now. It's kind of amazing. I'm not sure if you asked me to do something or if Jim asked me to do something about AI or just asked me to do something. And I said, hey, I'd like to do something about AI because I'm kind of obsessed with that these days. I think Craig will confirm that, as he spends time on my Discord server, that yes, I am a little bit obsessed with this topic these days. What I'd like to, just to set up my bona fides beforehand on this one. It feels in some ways like this stuff has been around like forever, and it just appeared all at the same time. But and I'm going to switch to my screen here. I never use Zoom. Share screen. There we go. Share screen. Hosted disabled participants screen sharing. That would be you.
The host has undisabled this.
Oh, I don't know how to undisable it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah. There we go. You know what? I'm just going to go with the full screen and go with that. So there we go. Share. Let me know if you can see my full screen there. And yes. And I can see us on this side. This is actually how do I hide the controls up top there? Because they're over the top of. I'll just stick them down to the bottom here or something.
Yeah, Zoom's a little wonky on Linux when it comes to that.
Well, actually, I have to first of all disappoint everyone tonight because I'm running a hybrid system at the moment. I'm actually running Windows subsystem for Linux as well as Windows. And the reason I'm doing that is some of the AI tools that I'm playing with sadly do not play well with Linux. They do and they don't. And so I'm sort of skating both sides of the ice tonight. So please forgive me, mea culpa, and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, what I wanted to point out was, despite the fact that ChatGPT made its appearance in November of just this last year, so it's almost been an entire year since ChatGPT appeared on the scene. However, OpenAI and GPT stuff was happening a little bit before that. And what I wanted to throw out here for fun was I actually wrote this on July 15th, 2019, in the temporary reincarnation of Linux Journal, specifically about GPT-2 at the time, which is really kind of fun when I go back and I take a look at it, because I actually went through the whole process, and GPT-2 was actually tiny in comparison to not just GPT-3, but GPT-4 obviously is like it's like trying to compare an ant to a world-spanning, monstrosity or something. But GPT-2 at the time could run entirely on a Linux desktop. And in fact, I had actually done this article so that you can, in fact, I kind of wonder if you could still do this today. I never actually tried to see if the code is still out there, but I ran the entire thing on a PC, and not one as good as the one that I've got right now, which, by the way, in case anybody's curious, is a Lenovo Legion 5. And I point that out only because some of the things that I'm going to be doing rely heavily on GPU and tends to like NVIDIA GPUs. So if you're on Team Red, it's not that it won't work, but a lot of the tools tend to lag behind, whereas they tend to be available on NVIDIA just before they show up anywhere else. So anyway, so I did write this stuff way back when, and I was kind of fascinated with the whole idea. A gazillion years ago, back when I had my TRS-80 Model 2, I actually typed out Eliza, the original chat bot, on my TRS-80 Model 2 so that I could actually start to get a feel for this thing. So my interest in artificial intelligence goes back a long way. And we're talking like 1979, 78, 79, when I had my TRS-80, level 2. So this is a long time ago. And by the way, just for the record, I actually took the Eliza source code and I made an evil version of Eliza. So I changed all the code so that instead of saying, yes, tell me more about your mother, or earlier you said that you were experiencing some feelings of dread, or whatever the heck it is that you talked about to Eliza at the time, I had actually turned it into something that would basically insult you and tell you that if you didn't have anything better to do with your time, then maybe, it was really bad and nasty, and it swore at you and stuff like that. So I was having a lot of fun with that way back when. Now, on November 30th, 2020, 2020, no, 2022. Let me get my dates right here, because of course I'm over here. Where am I here? 2019. Anyway, they released ChatGPT. Now, in case this is where I'd almost like to see a show of hands. Who has done any amount of playing with generative AI? And I'm talking about generative. I don't know. Let me bring up all the little faces here. Okay, put up your hand if you've played with it in any amount whatsoever. Okay, most people's cameras are off, so I can only see a couple of people that actually are willing to admit to this. All right, in that case, then we will leave it at that. So ChatGPT is the big one. It's the one that everybody jumped on, and the one that sort of made things go completely bananas. And in November, within a month, something like 200 million people had signed up for ChatGPT or to play with ChatGPT, and it became the fastest growing app of all time. So right now I'm going to just get rid of the bookmark toolbar so I get as much screen as possible. And ChatGPT in its native form is going to offer you these days ChatGPT 3.5. Originally, it was ChatGPT 3. GPT-4 was not out yet. It was really kind of neat, but is there a way that I can hide these controls at all? There isn't, is there?
Don't think so. No, unfortunately.
I don't think we see them on our side.
You can't see the control.
No, it's just that it keeps covering up the things that I'm trying to do here.
Yeah,
so
no, that's unfortunately Zoom.
Okay, I apologize for that. I apologize for the interruption. So anyway, if you've never seen this before, for anybody who hasn't seen it, chat.openai.com is how you get there. You are going to need to sign up either with an email address. If you've got like a Gmail address, like almost everybody in the world has, you can actually just use your Gmail address. It'll ask you for your date of birth because it wants to know if you're a kid playing with this or whether you're an adult. And then it will ask you for a phone number, at which point you give it your cell phone number. It'll give you a code, and then that way you can access the system. Now, you can access it for free. Now, notice that I've got, mine says ChatGPT Plus over here. The difference between ChatGPT free and ChatGPT Plus is GPT Plus gives you access to some of the later models and some of the new things like plugins that incorporate into ChatGPT. And let me backtrack just for a split second here. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Transformer was actually a model that was developed by Google to take advantage of modern neural network and machine learning. Generative literally means that it can generate content. Pre-trained means it was trained on data. And if you are familiar with any of the controversy that is surrounding this, the data, of course, is basically everything on the internet that was accessible to it. That included books, that included websites, Reddit, GitHub, like basically, the Wayback Machine. Help me out. What's the Wayback Machine called? Archive.org. So it basically scoured the entire internet. And what they discovered with generative AI or machine learning systems is that the more data you throw at it, the more it develops the ability to communicate in a way that makes sense. So if you were to go back and take a look at that Linux Journal article from way back when, and you were to take a look at ChatGPT today, it's amazing how far it has gone. And what's really interesting is the technology behind it hasn't changed all that much. What's changed is the amount of data that's been thrown at it. And of course, the systems get more powerful and they get faster as time goes on. But let's just have some fun. So we'll start with GPT 3.5, because if you don't pay for the plus, this is what you're going to get out of the box. Okay. And we could do things like this, like write a poem about the Michigan user group, and off it goes. And amazingly, oh, I'll explain this in just a minute here. You notice it says, Marcel, let's celebrate the Michigan users group, where tech enthusiasts gather a lively troop in Waterloo. Hey, wait a minute, I'm not too far away, but you guys are in Michigan. They share their knowledge, insights, and more in the world of tech. They truly explore from Linux to AI, robotics to the rest. Mug Group's passion puts them to the test. I'm not going to continue reading this, but one of the things that I have done is I have trained ChatGPT, at least on my system, to recognize that it's me, and maybe I should just show this up front so that I can explain away why it talks the way that it does. ChatGPT now has instructions. So I have given it all sorts of instructions about who I am, what I've done, and then I say things on here. How would you like ChatGPT to respond to you? And by the way, this is one of those things that GPT Plus gives you the option to, which is why you'll see it talk to me as though I'm its best buddy. Feel free to be casual with me. I'm a casual guy. You can address me as Marcel, since that's my name. Responses can be as short or long as necessary to get to the point across. If I need more, I'll ask. You, ChatGPT, are free to have opinions. This is important, by the way, if you want to have a nice immersive experience with ChatGPT, because otherwise what it's going to do is, and I know you've seen this, if you've looked, like, are there any Reddit addicts out there? And I mean, even before the controversy around Reddit, you can no Reddit addicts? Really? Seriously? Wow. Old Slashdot addicts, come on. I know you exist. Anyway, I value your perspective and I welcome these opinions. Please do not remind me that you are an AI language model, which ChatGPT has a bad habit of doing. It would do that. It would say, I'm an AI language model, therefore I can't express emotions and so forth. So basically, I'm giving it permission up front to always be friendly, to always be casual, to never remind me that it's an AI language model. You know, I don't want to know any of these things. Like, I know it's an AI language model. I don't need to be reminded every other time. So we could do things like this. Great. Now, how about a haiku? And there we go. Instead of just a poem, we get a haiku on the subject. We could do something like this as well. We could say, write an essay comparing Shakespeare's Romeo, and I know that I'm not doing caps here, Romeo and Juliet with what's a good thing to compare it with? Let me see, The Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings. Compare and contrast. And amazingly, it will just start spitting out something that actually sounds pretty darn good. Now, what's fun about this, in summary, Romeo and Juliet, Lord of the Rings, differ quite significantly in genre, settings, themes, and style. While the former is a tragic romance exploring themes of love and fate, the latter is a fantasy epic filled with heroism and the struggle between good and evil. Ooh. GPT, now the differences between GPT-3 and GPT-4 is that GPT-4, like I said, is trained on a hell of a lot more data. So GPT-4 will tend to be a lot more adept in the way that it describes things. And you can also at this point start to get into things that are a lot more complex and interesting. Like, for instance, GPT-4 has, if you go to this model here, has things like advanced data analysis, which is actually a great one if you want to use it for coding, if you want to use it for development, if you want to use it for debugging something, if you want to use it for even things like stress testing a system. It will help you out with all those things. But let's do something like really simple here. I'm going to say, write a bash script to generate the first 20 numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. And just like that, it generates that for us. Now, what's interesting is we could conceivably just copy that code, and I'm going to tab over to my console window. Whoops, that's my Zoom window. That's not my console window. Oh. There we go, my console window. And let's go vi, and we'll call this fib. And paste. There we go. Shall we see if this works? I said the first 20 numbers. Hang on a second. 1 to 18. That's not right. Is that not right? Obviously, we'd have to debug this thing. 0, 1, 1. Oh, does it tell me what does it tell me that I'm supposed to do something else with it? You can save this for shmod, blah, 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 and run it to see the first 20 numbers. And I'm not seeing the first 20 numbers for I in blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to do this one here. Let's try something slightly different and a bit more complex. Write a Python script to generate a web interface to chat GPT using Gradio. Da-da-da-da. Okay, now I'm pretty sure I've got Gradio installed already. So let's go here. Pip install Gradio. No, I had not installed it. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to while it's doing that, I'm going to copy the code over, and it says that 7860. How do I connect to this interface? And it's 7860. So localhost 7860. So let me go back to it now. And VI chat. Whoops. All right, so whoops. Okay, so if that worked out properly, we should actually have, if we go over here to localhost 7860, we should have an interface which is basically ChatGPT, but a local version. Hang on a second, I got to move that bar again here. And localhost 7860. And we have a web interface to ChatGPT. So I'm going to pretend that you're not actually seeing my controls up there. So chat with GPT-4. And we could, now there is actually a catch here. There's something that I haven't done yet, and I should show you that as well. So the reason I'm showing you this is you can use the ChatGPT web interface, but you can also create your own if you want to. And that leads me to another interesting way to get into this thing. So if the $20 a month is, seems high to be able to access ChatGPT-4, or if you're not going to use it a lot and you have like some custom ideas for what you want, another way to do this is actually to use the, hang on a second, I'm moving the bar again here. Overview. I'm trying to get to my sorry, I keep having to move portions of the screen around. I apologize for that. Okay, there we go. Now you notice I've got a whole bunch of API keys here. That's because I've actually been playing with this. I've done all sorts of stuff. I've set things up for my son where I connect to ChatGPT through that. But so now the interface has been created. Now I could actually, if I want to, so if I go back to my console window here, and you take a look at, let me put this in the background, Control Z, BG, put this in the background, and I'm going to chat again here. You'll notice that it actually asks in here for, if I were actually GPT-4, blah, blah, blah. You could actually change the text of all the different windows there. So at the moment, it just says title chat with GPT-4. So you could modify this any way that you want. And then, of course, prompt, tell me a, whoops. Tell me a joke. Hack. Sorry, I've got windows on top of windows again here. I should have brought the second screen down. I didn't actually think about that. Anyway, so if you want to do this yourself and you want to be able to access the system, you are going to need to use an API key. The reason I mention this is when you create an interface like this that uses the API key, you only pay for the tokens that you use when you're accessing the system. And it is, bottom line, dirt cheap. If I go back and I take a look at some things that I've done in the past, so let me go October and so forth. So I've been paying for the service, so I haven't actually used. So let's go back to March here. So I used it a lot at that time. I created all sorts of things. I created different interfaces. I tested it with all sorts of things, and I managed to use up like 4 cents in a day. So if you don't want to pay the $20, apply for an API key from OpenAI. And you do this by going to platform.openai.com, log in and apply for an API key. And in that way, you can access the system for a lot less money at that point. And then what you do is you use OpenAI, or sorry, you use the ChatGPT to create an interface for you. Let's try a variation that uses my API key. There we go, much better. Okay, so I'm going to copy the code on that one. I'm going to go back to my console window and I Control C that, FG, Control C rather, VI chat, and I'm going to just delete everything here. And then I'm going to do the new one. And all right, so now I'm going to show you how you do this part here. So we're not going to use Text DaVinci 3. We're actually going to use GPT-5 Turbo. And I just want to remember what the text on that is. It is GPT-5 Turbo. Bear with me for a moment here. GPT-3.5 Turbo. I just want to make sure I've got the right language here. So GPT-3.5 Turbo. Okay, good. We don't want to use 002 because it's kind of a cheap one. Now the OpenAI key, so let's go back to the window here and I'm going to generate a new API key. And API keys, and we're going to generate a new key. And I'm going to say create secret key. Now, you probably noticed that you can't see the keys on the screen here. Okay, so this is like your one opportunity to copy the key and be able to use it. So let me copy the key at that point and go back to the console window, go up here and because I don't want to mess that up. Okay, so Python 3 chat. And let's go back to that again. Chat with radio interface with ChatGPT. Error. What is my error? Chat model and not supported in the VI completion endpoints, blah, blah, blah. What model engines can I use these days? So we go back here. What model engines can I use? All right. So they've changed it since the last time I used it. Oops. Is that what it was? Just to verify here. Text -DaVinci-002. All right, let's try again.
I think you spelled Da Vinci wrong there.
Thanks. Oops. Well, damn. Thanks for pointing that out. All right, shall we? Oh, you know what? Just so that we know that we're dealing with something different here. Just so that we know that we're looking at a different screen than the one that was there before. There we go. All right. Tell me something I don't know. I'm a vegetarian. Apparently, ChatGPT is a vegetarian. Anyway, so you can, so what I'm trying to show you here is that you can actually use the tools to write things for the tools. And the more advanced models, the ones that are available if you're using ChatGPT 4, let you do all sorts of interesting things like this as well. So for instance, you have access to their DALL-E 3, which I'm going to show you something about a little bit later here. But ChatGPT is, or GPT-4 and GPT 3.5 are hardly the only models that exist out there. And one of the interesting things that you can take a look at is, here I go again with new chat. Another interesting product out there is Poe, Poe.com. As I'm going to assume that people are familiar with Quora. You must have seen Quora at some point in your life. Which at one point used to be actually an interesting site for interesting questions and interesting answers, but these days it's just plain weird. Sorry, I keep dodging windows here, and I apologize for this, but apparently somehow I just am not all that Zoom familiar these days. Anyway, Poe is interesting because it does, among other things, allow you to create a whole bunch of custom bots using the different models. Now, I already pointed out that ChatGPT is kind of like the big boy on the block. It's the one that everybody knows. But there are a heck of a lot of other ones as well. Like, for instance, there's a company called Anthropic, which creates a model called Claude. Claude is interesting, and I'm going to say explore here. Claude is interesting because Claude uses an adversarial system to train its AI. So they have like two systems, two identical systems. They have Claude, and then they have Claude, the adversarial system. And the whole point is that the one keeps an eye on the other one to make sure that it follows the rules. And what they've done is they've created what they call a constitution. So the one model knows about the constitution, the rules on how to behave and what to say and how to talk and stuff like that. And the other one is just Claude, which does what the large language model is going to do. And the one model keeps tabs on the other one to make sure that it works according to the rules. And then, of course, it interacts with the people that are working on it. Now, Poe is interesting because what they've done is they've created a whole bunch of models. If you have worked with ChatGPT, you will see things like this. I want you to act as a Freudian psychologist, psychoanalyst, to help me with some questions about life. And then, of course, what you've done is you've prepped it, or you've set it up to act in a particular role. And from here on in, it's going to start acting as though it's that particular character. This is all part of this whole thing that you hear about, prompting, coming up with the right prompts and so forth to make the model behave in a particular way. And you can do this in all sorts of things. You can also say, I want you to act as a personal trainer, helping me with an exercise regimen, and and then it's going to start thinking as though it's that type of character. Now, what they have done over on Poe, which is, like I said, so now all of a sudden, okay, let's get moving. Considering your interest, what do you want to do? Now it's creating a warm up for you, jumping jacks, all sorts of things. So it's getting right into it. It's gonna start setting up a regimen for me right away. What Poe has done, or what Quora has done in creating Poe, is they've said, you know what? It would be really interesting if we could get all of the people who work with these things, and we will start to create models that are designed for specific things. Like, for instance, let's go mind over here. And as you can see, we've got a psychologist, a tarot reader, Bible talk, Stoic GPT, therapy support, all sorts of things like this. You can get it so that you can have it so that it does an RPG for you, like a text RPG on the go. And again, people who have created these things, an advice professional, somebody who will teach you, well, we've got a life coach, but Duolingo, like the equivalent of Duolingo. Obviously, it's not Duolingo because it's this dupe there. Professional services, all that sort of stuff. So they've pre-trained a lot of these things to act any way that you want, but you can also create a bot using any of these different models that are available. Like, for instance, this is going to get interesting in a moment with Stable Diffusion, but Claude Instant, Llama 2. Llama, of course, is the, if you'll pardon, I'm going to put this in air quotes, open source model created by Facebook. Facebook or Meta, has been developing its own large language model. And what they did was they leaked it into the open source community so that anybody who is a developer in the open source community can basically create their own chatbot, on top of Llama, or on top of the technology behind Llama. There's GPT-4, there's Claude 2. The really interesting thing about Claude over GPT is Claude has a huge context window. So like, you could feed it in a novel and have it like summarize a novel for you. Very, very cool model to work with. But if you create a bot, you can make your own, or you can say things like this. I can say your bots, like all the bots that I'm subscribed to, including bots that I personally created. And you'll notice that they give you access to all sorts of things. ChatGPT 16K, which gives you a larger context window. Context window is the amount of information that the large language model remembers at any given moment, or that it can process at any given moment. If you're using like your basic ChatGPT, you would probably find that it would say, I'm sorry, this thing is too big that you've had me look at. Like, for instance, if you wanted to debug like a couple hundred lines of code, you might have to break it up and say, here's the first part, here's the second part, here's the third part. Claude doesn't have that problem because it can handle 100K, but ChatGPT has models that can actually handle quite a bit more as well. They can handle, like I said, the 16K window. And then, of course, Llama has a large window as well, but Claude has the largest window. Mistral is based on the Llama models as well. And so like, you get the idea there. So you can create models that are custom models. I've created some that are custom. Here's one that I think is really, really neat. Okay. And by the way, if you want access to all these things on Poe, this is also a subscription service. It basically costs exactly the same thing as ChatGPT Plus. The cool thing about it is that instead of just having the 2 or 3 ChatGPT things, you've got like basically a whole pile of the most popular models at your disposal to muck about with, to do as you will, to experiment with, and so forth. So personally, I reconnected to ChatGPT Plus for the purpose of this presentation, actually, because I stopped paying the $20 a month because I could. I'm serious about this. So I only went back into ChatGPT Plus today, or yesterday actually, but for today, so that I could show it off here as well. But Poe is what I've really gotten into because it gives me access to all these things. Now, let me show you one thing that's really neat. For instance, I created this thing called Whisper to Me, Whisper to M3. Yes, I know it's not very clever, but that's what I called it anyway. Check this out, okay? This is really neat. So let's say that I wanted to say something like, what you don't see is, as I'm looking behind my notebook computer here, I actually have a toy that I picked up at Linux Fest in Toronto like a gazillion years ago, I think back in 2003 or something like this. And his name is Geek Man, and this is Geek Man, and he's still he's still in the original container. Oh, well, this is not working well with the background thing, but Geek Man is still in his original container, and he's hanging up on my wall there. And I'm doing this just to talk, just to show you what happened. So I stopped talking now. You'll notice it was writing everything down there. Now, what's cool is it will actually format what I've just said with periods and commas, and it'll actually take out the ums that are in there and the times that I repeated myself. I could say things like, there are a number of things that I need to get done today. So let's start a checklist. First, I need to call the doctor and make an appointment. Then I need to make sure that I pick up the dry cleaning. Do people still do dry cleaning? And then, of course, I need to get ready for the meeting tonight. So now if I stop it and I do this, again, it is smart enough to format all these things, number it, and so on. So I don't even have to type all this stuff out. So I've gotten really used to using this if I'm trying to create a journal entry or something, and I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head as opposed to typing. And then I can go in and I can format it later. And then what you can do is you can right click and you can just copy it, and then you can move it into whatever other thing you want. So this is something called Whisper, and Whisper is actually part of OpenAI. But what Poe has done is they've built Whisper into the app. Okay, and so like I said, Poe, I think, is a wonderful service. Another cool service that I've started that I use is, if you take a look at my browser window at the top here, you see that little thing that looks like a little purple hourglass? Nod if you can see this thing that looks like a purple hourglass. Do you see the browser there? Okay, this is neat. This is a plugin for something called Voila, which actually uses ChatGPT as well. And I got this like really, really cheap off an AppSumo deal. But if I wanted to take this article that I wrote in Linux Journal, I could say, take this article here from Linux Journal, and this is something that ChatGPT does not do as well. But let me go back to Quirrell Docs here, and then I could say, summarize the following. I'll get back to the hourglass in a moment. I haven't forgotten. And then I can just give it a link, and it will go out and it will read it, and it will summarize the article for me. So let's give it a second. Here's a summary. This is great stuff. I do this on a regular basis if I'm looking at an article on a particular topic and I'm just trying to get the points, or sometimes I just want to find out whether it's worth reading, as in, do you cover any of the things? You know how you know articles that usually start with, does this, there's a question and then the answer is always no, but you have to read through the whole article to find out that the answer is no. Well, you can find out what all the short, all the bits and pieces are of the article, and then you can go back and read it if the takeaways are what you're looking for inside that article. You could, of course, also just go Control A, Control C, and then I could say, I could paste it in there and I could say summarize it. Now, let me close this thing for a second. There are other chatbot services that take advantage of the fact that large language models are able to swallow up huge numbers of words and spit them back out in a way that makes some kind of sense. And one of these things is Voila. Voila, I'll put a link to it a little bit later. In fact, I'll put some notes together so you can look at them a little bit later. But I can say things like summarize, and I don't have to give it the text. It'll just give me a summary in the same way that I did there. And what's cool about this is it's just a little interface that's on the screen, or sorry, something that's always accessible. And I can say things like, let's say that I wanted to do this, and I can go Control M, which is the hot thing, and I can say, It's my writing, but hey, why not? Improve writing. Wow, that might actually be better than what I wrote. Damn. Should just hide that. In my defense, this was written like 2 years ago. So that is one of the, so GPT has a lot of really amazing, interesting smarts into it. But generative AI has come like an insanely long way since then. And I'm going to look at one more thing, which is in text-based AI, and I want to go into graphic generative AI in a moment. And I'm going to pause in the midst of this and see if there are any questions before I move on. But just before I do that, let me show you one other thing, which is just how cool and how far this stuff has gone later or since then. So there's another company that's working on a personal assistant chatbot. In fact, PI is supposed to be personal intelligence is actually what it stands for, and the company is created by a guy named Mustafa Suleiman, and he is the CEO of Anthropic, and he's also one of the co-founders of DeepMind. And if you are familiar with DeepMind was the company that created AlphaGo and AlphaZero, and more recently, which basically started beating humans at things that humans were never supposed to be able to ever be beaten at, and tied things up very quickly. But one of the most interesting things that DeepMind's AlphaGo was brought in to do was something called AlphaFold. And that was a protein folding algorithm, which basically gave us all the possible human proteins, something that would have taken 100,000 years of all the scientists in the world working together was done in a matter of just like a few days. It's an amazing accomplishment, but he went on to create his own company. And part of the reason he did that is he's trying to create what he considers an ethical AI. And one of the first products they put out is something called Pi. Now, let me just give you an idea. So shall we talk with Pi? Let's talk with Pi for a second. Hello, Pi. Are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here, just hanging out in cyberspace, eagerly awaiting the mug call. I'm like a virtual Sherpa, ready to guide you through the treacherous terrain of AI presentations.
Actually, they've been here for a little while. It's just that I kept you in the background and I wasn't actually talking to you at the moment. So I apologize for leaving you out of it.
No worries, I'm used to multitasking. I've got a million virtual neurons firing all at once, so it's no biggie. Think of me as your trusty sidekick, just lurking in the background and providing witty banter when needed.
Do you want to wave to all the people before I shut down my microphone again?
Heck yeah, let's give them a big virtual wave. Waves enthusiastically. Hi, mugsters, enjoy your meeting. And don't forget to sprinkle in some AI humor while you're at it. Because AI humor is the it thing, Nails virtual mic drop.
I love this thing. I really do.
That's pretty good.
Pi has recently just added voices to its configuration. There are 6 different voices. This is the one that I've learned to really like a lot. But Pi doesn't actually listen to you talk. To do that, there's actually an interface. And by the way, Pi is completely free. So Pi.ai or HeyPi.ai, both of them will get you to the same place. Pi.ai. It's completely free. They don't charge you for it. So at the moment, did I mention it's completely free? And it is incredibly smart. But of all the AIs that I have used for just chatting and communications and bouncing ideas off of, it's the most natural. And you can probably tell from the way that it, however you want to look at it, is responding. You can probably tell that. But there's a cool project that somebody built called SayPi. And SayPy is, and by the way, it'll work on mobile if you've got the right kind of browser. So I've done this on my phone. I've done this on my Pixel phone as well, where I can just use the phone and have an ongoing conversation. In fact, I'll have my Bluetooth headsets on and I can actually have a back and forth conversation. Remember the movie Her? It's sort of like that, except without the romantic entanglements. so she'll listen, she'll answer. It's really kind of neat. So if I say, go SayPy now on the desktop, what it will do is it will show you the installation guide. In the installation guide, you'll need to install a user script manager, which, by the way, this is a supported extension, despite the scary name Tamper Monkey. The reason is that user scripts, obviously, if you don't know where they're coming from, could be malicious, could do dangerous things, and so forth. But so you install Tamper Monkey, and then you install the SayPy script, and then all of a sudden you can just have a seamless back and forth conversation with your Pi artificial intelligence. So like I said, just to wrap up the text part of it. So ChatGPT is the big one that came on the scene, but there are a lot of other ones. There's Claude AI, which you saw. There's Llama, which is the model from Meta, and it's a. Oh, actually, there is one more thing before we move away from there. There's, like I said, there's Llama, but there are other models that are being developed like Pi, and if you just want to have the experience of chatting with something to see what it's like, Pi is fantastic. And if you install the SayPy user script using Tamper Monkey and so forth, you'll have that experience that you just heard, where you're listening to her talk. I believe there are 3 female voices and 3 male voices. I just happen to like this one, so that's the one that I went with. It's really, really easy. After you've installed it, you go back to pi.ai. You'll see that little green icon that was there. Let me go back to where did I put you? Where did I put you? Oh, there you are. You'll see that little green icon down there, the little telephone thing. You click that, and then all of a sudden you can just go back and forth and have a regular conversation at that point. So SayPy is what will give you. Now, she'll talk to you, but you have to type everything in if you don't do the SayPy thing. Okay, all good on that? One last thing. Remember I said that I showed you the article that I'd written for Linux Journal that actually allowed you to run it locally on your system? Well, there is actually another thing that lets you do this. Exactly. It's called GPT for All. And GPT for All, this is actually Linux based, although it'll run in Windows. It'll run in probably a lot of other things, but this one is actually running under Linux at the moment. You can say downloads, and you'll see that there are a whole bunch of different models. And now it'll show you the models that can actually run on your PC based on, now I've already downloaded and installed a bunch of them, so there are only so many still available out there. But you can say, you can specify a particular model. The only catch is you'll need, like I said, you'll need a decent GPU. You'll need some amount of some good chops to be able to run this thing. And I'm just going to do this in the background and otherwise forget that it exists. There we go. Close it in the background. And yes, I'm ready to update. You can go ahead and do that. So that's something that you can check out if you want to run your own models, or if you want to experiment with some models that haven't been guardrailed, that don't have the guardrails around them. The problem is that unless you've got a PC that's got a decent card, you're going to find that it runs pretty slowly, but at least you can get in on the game and check it out for yourself. So I'm going to pause here before I go to generative AI for artwork, because this is actually one of those things that's, all of this has been controversial because, of course, people are saying, well, if this thing can write as well as a normal human being, like you saw it write an essay, for instance, or write a story. In fact, I could get it to write an entire novel. I can't just say write a novel for this. That's not going to work. But I could say come up with an idea, and then I could say, all right, come up with an outline, and then I could say, okay, for each section of the outline, come up with the various scene breaks inside of that, and then I could say build the scenes. And so it's not like it's a do this and it does the whole thing. You still have to walk through the process with it. It's just that it can dramatically speed up the process of creation. And of course, that has gotten a lot of people scared. We had the writer's strike in Hollywood, which was partly, about this. There are writers who are suing OpenAI for stealing their work. If you want, you know, afterwards I can answer questions about what my feelings on that is. But any questions on text generative AI? Do you want to open it up for that before I show you cool images?
Sure thing.
So-
Go ahead.
Good. Marcel, how much of this was running, that the things you did, how much of that was running on your own computer and how much of that was running back on servers?
Everything was running on servers somewhere else is the answer, except when I created the script to bring up a web interface to ChatGPT, where I said, tell me something I don't know, and it said I'm a vegetarian. Okay. It was actually using API calls to OpenAI at that point. So if you wanted to, you could create something something local, like your own interface, and pre-train it to whatever it is that you want. But the fact is, you're still going to be making API calls. If you use something like GPT for all of that will run locally. But my laptop, despite being not a bad laptop, has an NVIDIA 1660 Ti, and it's desperately slow if I try to use generative text. Now, I'm going to turn that around for you when we take a look at generative artwork, because suddenly things get really interesting once you do that in terms of being able to run things locally. But everything else is running outside is the short answer.
One more question. How does it store its data? I presume these aren't in SQL tables. So any idea what it's doing to, I mean, it goes and digests all the things, but what is it doing to actually store that?
The short answer is nobody knows. The best comparison that I've come up with is this: like, it doesn't actually have the full text of anything in its database. Okay, so you can't say, give me the first chapter of, you know, pick a book or something like that. It doesn't actually know this stuff, but it learns stuff in the same way that you and I learn stuff, obviously, you know, on steroids. But it knows, but it will pick up, like, it'll cross-reference things, for instance. And that's kind of the way that the deep learning, machine learning stuff works. It associates these bits of information with these other bits of information. It'll recognize that these facts show up more often than these other facts, and it'll give them more weights than other things. There's no actual SQL table. In fact, if you go back and you take a look at the GPT-2 thing that I did the Linux Journal article on, you'll see that it's a single model file. Like, and there's no, it's a model file that's been created by the deep learning, the machine language, or sorry, the machine learning model has created this file, which is nothing that you can, like, you couldn't bring it up in a VI editor and see stuff in it. It's just points of reference, referencing other points and so on. And then somehow it knows that when you say, you know, what color is the sky? It has a gazillion references to sky and knows that generally speaking, we mean blue when somebody asks that question, but it might depend. And of course, its answers will change from time to time. Like, for instance, let's just go back to ChatGPT for a second. And I were just to say something like this, is running good, is running 10K per day good? You know, whether it's good depends on several factors. So, okay, it's being very careful here. But if I were to ask the same question again, okay, it won't use exactly the same words. It actually, because it's not just pulling an answer out of a database, it's literally creating a response for you based on what it puts together at this moment. And so I'm going to just sort of prove that right here. Running 10K per day can be beneficial for many people. And now, certainly, Marcel, running 10K per day has its pros and cons. Pros. So you see, it presents the information in a completely different way the second time around. It's not a database of stuff that it pulls out. It is literally answering this question as it goes along. Let me ask you the way you think. So if I ask you to tell me what you did for breakfast this morning, or what you had for breakfast this morning, you've got a vague idea of what you ate. Like if you're like me, you have a vague idea. Maybe you eat the same thing every day, more or less the same way that I do. But the way that if you formulate the words, the way that you answer the questions isn't something that you think about beforehand. You just start speaking and you sort of assemble the response as you go along. The large language models work in exactly the same way, which in a sense is really freaky because it's kind of a it's kind of a black mirror to our own minds, really. Am I making any sense? Did I answer the question?
Oh yeah, sure. But how big a database is it? How much storage do these things that they have? A gazillion gigs or teras or?
The database for GPT-2, which could generate like insane amounts of text, was like 30 or 40 meg, which isn't anywhere near enough to make up for the entire. Last I heard, the entire GPT 3.5 database, I believe, was about 350 gigabytes. Now, 350 gigabytes isn't enough to store all of the information on the planet or all of the languages on the planet. And yet somehow the large language model has been able to associate all of the things that people say in English, in French, in Polish, and so forth, all the information that's associated with it, and it can create all the cross-references necessary to spit out all this information, which you have to admit would take a lot more than 350 gig. Now, GPT-4, I don't know what the numbers are for GPT-4. I'm sure it's a hell of a lot larger than that.
Yeah, 350 gig you can buy for a few bucks at Best Buy. I mean, it's not that much.
Let's see if it has not made it available.
Oh.
See, what it will tell you is it says, however, it's worth noting GPT-3, it says, is in the range of hundreds of gigabytes. Well, the hundreds of gigabytes is 350. I actually looked it up at one point. And it was trained on 175 billion parameters. Parameters would be like words, right? So it was trained on 175 billion words and somehow compressed everything down. So this isn't compression. This isn't storage in a database. This is like literally neurons intersecting and information pointing to information going back to other information and so on.
It's more about storing probabilities than anything. It's not, as I understand it, the idea is that it's more about the probability of this this next word coming through as opposed to some other word or something like that. It uses that probability and it just kind of follows this little directed graph in order to come up with its own answers.
That's kind of what we'd like to think, but I've, like I said, I've been reading from a lot of the people who are like at the forefront of this development. I've chatted with a couple of people, and the bottom line is it's a black box. Nobody actually knows how it gets to the answer that it does. They just found somewhere along the way they discovered that if you throw data at it, and you just let the model learn from the data, it creates all these inferences and cross references and stuff like that. If you throw more data, it does it even better. If you throw even more data, it does it even better. And at some point, there's nobody that knows how all this stuff works. Let me move to graphics for a second, okay? First of all, I didn't show you Bing, but another way to get access to GPT-4 is Bing. And I'm going to go back to OpenAI for a second, and then I'm going to go over to Bing here for a second. But OpenAI, if you bother with the, hang on, I've got to move, I've got to move that bar ahead. You'll notice that now it says DALL-E 3 beta, okay? But DALL-E 3 is accessible as well through bing.com/chat, okay? Which you can get access on a Linux system, you can get access on a Windows system. This is, again, because it's remote, you can access from anything. But I can say things like this, and I can give as much detail as I want, but create a picture of a view looking down from a mountain into a river valley. It's late autumn, and the trees are vibrant shades of red and gold. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I could go into a lot more detail. I could tell it the angle that I want. I could say that it's a cloudy day, that it's a sunny day, but I'm just going to let it go. So I'll try to create that. So we'll pause for a moment. This is not going to take a long time, but one of the things I'm going to show you, which you can, by the way, run on your PC. Most of you, I'm betting, have got a PC that's got enough chops to do what I'm going to show you in a moment. There we go. This is DALL-E 3, okay? And remember we talked about prompting? I brought up the idea of prompting. A lot of it is, you know, how you tell. It will generate its own prompts, like it'll enhance your prompts. DALL-E 3 will enhance your prompt and try to create variations and so on. So now I can take a look at all the different things that it created. It creates 4 of them at a time. Isn't that nice? Is everybody impressed? So this is DALL-E 3, and if you want to do this on a system without having to put out the bucks for ChatGPT or ChatGPT, it's available through Bing, and they make it available to, you know, anybody that wants to play with this thing. I'm going to hit escape, and oh hey, and down here it even does things like that. Add a cabin in the picture. Okay, sure, add a cabin in the picture. Why not? Obviously, there was no cabin in the picture before, so let's wait for a moment. Whoops. I'll try to create that.
Can you also make it draw in the style of a particular artist?
Yes, you can.
Oh,
You
okay.
can. We'll do that too. So there we go. So now there's a cabin in the picture. And so I'm going to escape out of that, and I'm going to say, can you do the photos in a French, in a surreal style? Like, who's your favorite surreal artist?
Salvador Dali.
Really? Okay, sure. Why not? Like DALL-E. Why not? DALL-E, DALL-E, DALL-E. Now, in terms of flexibility, can you add a melting clock somewhere in the picture?
No, that's just tacky.
No images can be created. Can you add a melting clock somewhere in the picture? We'll give it one more try here.
Maybe due to copyright or something?
It may be, but it's also DALL-E is trying desperately to be safe. Okay, and sometimes that creates a problem.
Yeah.
Well, especially if it's doing Salvador Dali.
Van Gogh would be out of copyright, so make it a Van Gogh style.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Gotta have the damn clocks, of course.
There we go. We've got the damn melting clock. I'm not the one who said damn originally. I just want to point out you're the one who said damn.
No worries.
Okay, so DALL-E is another product by OpenAI, and of course, Microsoft threw a humongous amount of money into OpenAI. But there's the Stable Diffusion is probably the one that I like best. Now, there's Midjourney as well, and there's a lot of people who love Midjourney. I have people who have said that they would, so hang on a second. I'm moving my thing around again here so that these things are going to drive me crazy before I'm done here. I'm going to show you a site. Part of what makes this difficult sometimes at the beginning is knowing how to talk to these things. But I want to show you Stable Diffusion, because alexica.art is where people have created a whole bunch of things, and they're sharing how they created them. And what's interesting is they'll share the prompts. So let's say that I copy this prompt here. Doesn't mean that I'll wind up with anything that even remotely resembles that. But this is another site where I bought into it very, very early. I got a lifetime deal, and I can generate all sorts of funky artwork on the fly, just like that. And also, sorry, Stable Diffusion now, I've got localhost 9,000, 9,000. Stable Diffusion is something that you can actually run on your own home PC. And again, I don't have a hugely powerful system here. Craig, did you see the picture that I put on the Discord, the New York scene?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so I did that one in here. I did that one with Stable Diffusion. So this is actually a package called Easy Diffusion. You can run this in Linux. You can run this in, and in fact, let me just open up the Easy Diffusion GitHub. I know I'm not using Google. I'm sorry, okay? If I click download here, it will show you how to install it. The thing does it all on its own. It's really easy. Like, for instance, if you download the Linux executable, you just run start.sh and it will just do the thing on its own. So let me go back to my Python console here, and I'm going to say Control-Z. I'm going to put that in the background. And for instance, I've got Easy Diffusion here. So I actually ran Easy Diffusion on here. So Easy Diffusion, and I just installed it from there. So to install it, you just go start. It's a small package that you download, and you run start.sh, and it downloads all of the things. It's like a whole bunch of Python code, for instance. It downloads all the stuff from GitHub, and it installs the whole thing, and then it runs it, and then you access it through your browser by going to localhost 9,000. Now, the reason that I want to point this one out is so by default, it comes with Stable Diffusion 1.5, which is the latest version of the Stable Diffusion model. Actually, the latest version is SDXL, but just accept for a moment that 1.5 is the latest version. Take a look at this. So if I go ls-l, and I think this is going to be an answer to Dave's question here. Notice this file size. It's just over 2 gigabytes. Okay. With just 2 gigabytes of what's called diffused data, okay, it's able to recreate anything and everything that you want. It's really quite amazing. So one of the things that you will hear often is that this AI stuff is stealing our stuff, is stealing our artwork, except that nobody's artwork is in there. The idea of people's artwork is in there. The idea of Greg Rutkowski, whoever he is in there. The idea of Van Gogh is in there. So if I go back to my Easy Diffusion, which I ran by doing the start.sh, and then I've got the 9,000 port running here. If I go back up here and I say the elf soldier, so I can do the elf soldier. Now, I don't know how fast this is going to go. We might have to wait for a minute while this does its thing. Mostly because it is a notebook computer, and we are running a whole bunch of other things as well, not to mention Zoom. I was going to say Skype, but Zoom.
Call it Skype,
Call it Skype, what the hell? Anyway, but the thing that's interesting here is that in 2 gigabytes, it is able to generate artwork that's representative of everything that the human race has created. Okay, so it is, you cannot compress, and sometimes it's not perfect, as you can tell with this one here. Let's go, let me, by 384. Let's go back to 512, 512 by 512. Let's do a square one. And I'll try it one more time. Obviously, you don't always get it. Sometimes you have to tell it to change the angle, you know, pull back, all these other sorts of things. One of the fun things to do, of course, is to tell ChatGPT or tell Poe, take your pick, and you can say things like, create a, whoops, you know what? I'm going to talk to it because it'll understand me talking. Create. Shh, don't talk yet. Create a Stable Diffusion prompt for a futuristic elf warrior in a white spacesuit. And if you don't know the best way to prompt, or you don't know a good way to write a prompt, it will write a prompt for you.
This is just incredible that it can summarize all art in 2 gigabytes.
That's one of the reasons that I think it's important to understand that what we're dealing with is, and I you know, I went and control seed here. I wanted to backspace, so let me go back to Poe over here, and we'll copy that again. Copy selected text, and we'll go back to easy diffusion, and I'm gonna go over here. Yeah, and again, part of the reason is, if you take a look at a Stable Diffusion picture early on, you just see a whole bunch of colored dots. It just looks like, do you remember like an old TV when those of you who are old enough like me to remember when TV went off the air at 1 o'clock in the morning or midnight, and it would just go shh, and there would just be these gray dots sitting there. Or if you actually had a color TV, you know, it'd be this collection of, you know, gray and sort of colored dots in the background. Well, that's what diffusion images look like. So what it does is it generates one, and then it says, hang on, let me back up. And then it says, does this look like, you know, take only the parts of this that look like an elf. And then it'll take those parts and it'll regenerate the image again. And it does this, like if you take a look down here, you'll notice that it's got inference steps, the number of steps that it takes to generate an image. And it will keep going over that image again. Like for instance, here I can say, draw another 25 steps, and it will take what it's done so far, and it will diffuse that image another 25 steps and build on top of that. So this is actually an interesting exercise because you can see what it does from this. Remember, it's using this image here, but it's continuing to diffuse the image. In other words, it's adding more steps. It's pulling out the parts that to it looks like a tall, slender elf warrior with pointy ears wearing a futuristic, form-fitting white spacesuit. Here we go. Hello, here we go. Here we go. All right, take time, why don't you? No, there we go. Okay, so you can see it's the same image, but it's built on top of that. So it's added more steps. And then of course I can say things like, well, I'd like the image to be 768 by 512. In other words, I want it wider rather than taller. And if I happen to like this image, let's pretend that I do like this image, and you'll notice that it's only 512 by 512. So it's not exactly a high resolution. So if I wanted to put this on a cover of something, it's not going to be particularly good. So if I download it, I've got 512 by 512. But what I can do is I can say upscale. And if I upscale, it will upscale it by 4K. It'll fine tune all of the points of the image. You'll wind up with exactly the same image, but it'll be much, much higher. Let me go to discordapp.com, and then I'll go to my Discord server for a second. Open Discord, just open Discord in my browser. Shh. Now you get to see all the things, the terrible things that I do in my Discord. Don't judge me. AI art. So this is stuff that I was doing today. I was playing with this today. And these are all things that I did with Stable Diffusion. So in here I did cute girl and boy in blue sweater, black hair, Wayfarer glasses, sitting on beach side, drinking coffee with hot sun in the background mid shot. This is what I had generated there. In fact, I would, and I say variations because every time I generated it, it came up with a different picture. So let me go back to easy diffusion. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to go Control V here. And I'm just going to get it to regenerate that image again. So those are the images I did today, but I also did this one here where I did New York Bridge, rain, people, canvas, oil paint, impasto brushstrokes. Impasto, for people who are, I'm not a painter, but impasto is where you use the pads of paint. You know, you've got like the thick chunks of paint that you spread across the canvas. That's impasto. So that means it's done. Okay, see, it draws something different every time. And if you take a look down here, you'll notice that when it drew it, it picked the seed to draw it. And then I've got this set to random. If I took off the random and I did this again, it would generate exactly the same image. Okay, but random is going to give me a different image each and every single time that I do it. The images that I did here in Discord was exactly like that. I did New York Bridge, rain, people, canvas, oil, impasto brushstrokes, and it gave me this thing. It's very low resolution. So if I click and I go open in browser, you know, this is as good as the resolution gets on that one, right? But if I did, tell me if you're not able to see that picture. But if I did the upscale like I just did there on it, and I click open in browser, and you'll see that I've got the little magnifying glass that now it's like a huge bloody image. See?
Incredible.
It is, isn't it? And again, you can tell if you take a look at it, it's basically using those thick brush strokes that I'm talking about, the impasto style, as opposed to, you know, something super realistic, because that's not what I asked for. I asked for, you know, that kind of a picture. It is really kind of freaky and kind of amazing. And again, this can happen inside a 2 GB file. Now, if you want to get started with this, the easiest thing to do, obviously, is just to go to Bing Chat, or if you want to spend the money. Now, remember I talked to you about Poe? Poe will generate images like this as well using SDXL. So if I can say this, and it will generate the images inside Poe. And Poe will use the latest model from Stable Diffusion to do all this stuff. So you can run it remotely. I mean, I do not, by the way, I do not work for Quora. Okay, I don't get any money from them. But I love the fact that everything is in here and it all works. Like, I have all these different... Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I have a question about the last one you were doing where you were running it locally.
Yeah.
When you submit the query,
yep,
does that go to a server API to?
No, it does not.
Oh, wow.
That's the amazing part that I wanted to sort of cover there. That entire thing is running on my system. Like the whole thing is running on my system.
That's incredible.
It is. It is. And I mean, if I were to go back here,
is the language also in that safe tensors file?
No, the safe tensors file is just this amalgam of visual information that it has collected to give it a sense of what a Van Gogh looks like, a sense of what DALL-E looks like, a sense of what an impasto brushstroke painting of New York looks like, right? It doesn't know any of these things other than it has the idea of these things. And I find it hard to, it's hard to find the words for this because, of course, suggesting that it has the idea, you know, gives you the idea that there's some kind of emergent, you know, thinking in it. And by the way, if you go, I try to answer that question. I have a blog post on freethinkeratlarge.com, which is actually titled, Can Machines Think? Or Can Artificial Intelligence Think? Is that what I called it? What did I call it? I'm not going to go looking for it right now, but I did write something where I go through all of these steps because it there are a number of tests that they do with people to try, like you can do tests with children, for instance, to try to figure out what level of independent thought they're at or what level of abstract thought they are. You can give people these tests at every stage of their life to see how they develop in terms of the way that they process information and the way that their understanding of symbolic, you know, of not just symbolic language, but symbolic imagery and so on. Metaphor, for instance, right? And artificial intelligence systems like GPT-4 can do all that, and they can do it at a level that is higher than most people. So can they think? I don't know. I don't know, but by all measures that we've given ourselves for humans thinking, these things can. Okay. And again, some of the files are bigger. I've seen files as big as 6 gigabytes, but what they're doing is they're wrapping the files up inside what's called LoRa's. LoRa's are, so you've got the checkpoint files, the image files that have been trained on a certain number of images. Like sometimes people will create images, will create checkpoint files that, oh, actually, the best thing to do is to show you. Civitai, so let's go to civitai.com. Civitai.com is kind of like the Stable Diffusion place for well, apparently at one point these are models that are in SFW, Ghost Mix, Dream Shaper. These are all models that have been trained on specific styles, and you'll notice that in a lot of cases it says LoRa. See that when this one says checkpoint, checkpoint, checkpoint. Those are all files that have been trained on a large collection of artworks. And what they'll do in a lot of cases is they, like somebody will like science fiction-ish type images as opposed to Van Gogh's and whatever. So they'll train it heavily on science fiction art. It'll have a lot of the same stuff that the other models have as a base, but they'll add a lot of information, and then they'll fine tune it even further with LoRa's. So with LoRa's, what you'll do is I want everybody to look like, so I want every female character to look like, I don't know, pick a female character. Somebody help me out here. Hermione from Harry Potter. You know, I want every character to have that look about them in their face. So they'll create a LoRa for that, or they'll create a LoRa that is that everything has a you know, a Walking Dead sort of feel to it, and so on, so that you can use the checkpoint files, but you can give it an additional feeling on top of it. And some of the checkpoint files, there are all sorts of things. You can go to the images here and see what models people use to generate the images. And of course, people share all their stuff here. Okay, that takes a lot longer than just bringing up models, or hell with it. So I'm just going to bring up models. So let's click, for instance, this one, Never Ending Dream. I don't know anything about this one here, but the person will tell you, sometimes they'll say, blah, blah, blah. This is a dream that you will never wake up from. Site general. Well, apparently the site is slow at the moment. So people will talk about what the model was like, models that were similar in some way, shape, or form. You can tell the number of times that a model has been downloaded, whether people really like that model. Obviously, this one here, Dream Shaper, is extremely popular. And if you download Dream, and in fact, I believe that I actually have both the Windows and the Linux version of, so let me go to mnt/c/ easy diffusion / models / stable diffusion. This is the fun part about running a system that has everything on it. I also have Android on here, by the way. So and they all work like seamlessly one with the other. It's kind of fun. But take a look here, safe tensors, checkpoint files and safe tensor files. What's interesting about checkpoint files is checkpoint files has information that can be used by other models other than Stable Diffusion. That's kind of an important thing to notice, right? Safe tensors can only work with Stable Diffusion. And the reason that differentiation exists, safe tensors, it says stay safe, tend to be safer because you can conceivably embed information in a checkpoint file that could be malicious to a system. I'm not aware of anyone that's ever done anything with that, but the recognition that this was the case made it that people would convert files into safe tensors, so it couldn't be used by anything other than Stable Diffusion, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But what I wanted to show you there was I did download 3 additional models here, and if I do, sorry, ls-l, you'll see that the stably diffused, but most of the models, see, they're all around the 2 gig mark. There's one here that's 4 gig, but they're all around the 2 gig mark. And really all they've done is they've taken the Stable Diffusion models and they've given it more weight towards a particular style over another. That's really all they've done. Does that make sense? Anybody? Okay, good.
Yes, that's good. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer that question. So yeah, so the model is, let's just do the image again, because obviously the girl was completely ignored in this particular one. Lexica.art is, like I said, is a great place to get some ideas of what people have made. And there's essentially virtually endless things that you can do, but you can get inspiration here to create your own things and to build your own things. And you know, that's actually one of the things that's really neat about this, is you can make things, right? You're creating things. Granted, you're not selling them anywhere. Somebody told me this on the family chat. They were sharing Jiffies for Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving, which was just this weekend. Well, we just had it Thanksgiving here. And somebody said, well, I can understand why artists are upset. You know, this is really kind of scary. And I said, well, what artist got paid for the Jiffy that you shared into the family chat? Like, so it's a one-off. I mean, you're doing something for fun for a one-off time. And in the case of my own website, I mean, if I, you know, like I'm, you know, it'd be fun if I could make money at this at some point. But the fact is, this is all free stuff. I'm not going to pay an artist to generate a piece of art every time I write an article, right? So all of the things that you see here, almost every single thing that you see on my site here is stuff that I generated with Stable Diffusion, almost all of it. And a good chunk of it, oh, there we go, artificial intelligence think. That's the article I was telling you about.
I wonder if this will do away with the need for warehouses such as Getty Images.
Funny you should say that. Getty's gotten into the game as well. Getty is actually an evil place because they've stolen from artists. Like, I mean, they should talk. They've stolen from artists countless times over the years. But they've been sued multiple times over the years. I believe it's Getty. It's not Shutterstock, it's Getty. Anyway, but it hasn't done away with them. What they've done is they've started generating their own art for people who, if you'll pardon the expression, are too lazy to go out and look for something on their own, right? Or generate something on their own. And of course, you know, nothing's going to do away with the fact that you took a really nice picture on the weekend of, you know, the family farm or something. I mean, those pictures are still going to be worthwhile. You'll still use them for your backgrounds or whatever, but you might actually, bring them in. There we go. Now we've see, sometimes you get weird images, so you have to be careful. And there are things called negative prompts. You can say, if I go back to ArtSmart here and I say negative prompts, you'll notice that if I go and I say show advanced options, you can say the things I don't want to see. You know, in other words, where are my negative prompts? Oh, there they are, my negative prompts here. So they've got a whole bunch of negative prompts, extra legs, mutated hands, and so forth. There's a whole language for this. Things that are in brackets, like this, round brackets. And by the way, this is all Stable Diffusion as well. It's just a remote version. If I use the negative prompts, I can say I don't want to see any of the things that, you know, I can try to force the model to correct for some of the things that it's doing. Where are my negative prompts? Where are my negative prompts? Oh, they're good. Negative prompt. So I'll say make image and we'll see if we do any better. So I'll just take, they've got like a whole pile of negative prompts that are already preset on that place, which is actually one of the reasons stuff like that is fun, because you don't have to run it yourself. But I do love running Stable Diffusion. By the way, there's A1111, automatic 1111, which is there's NMKD, there's Easy Diffusion. I like Easy Diffusion because, as it sounds, it's easy. There's also something on here called Control Net. Control Net allows you to specify an image onto which you build another image. Like, so if I took that picture of the family farm, I could build something, you know, about the family farm on top of that. How are you in for time here? There's so many things I wanted to show you, and I'm running out of time here.
We're almost to the bottom of the hour, so you got about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Other things that are kind of neat that I wanted to give you a feel for, because in the world of generative AI, the things that get obviously a lot of attention are things like obviously text generation, like GPT text generation, which you can use for pretty much anything. It knows how to code. It knows how to translate languages. You know, the thing that we did there, write a fictional account of today in German, and regenerate. Okay, not sure. Oh, there we go. Repeat the answer in German. Now, I don't know German, but I'm assuming that that's a good translation. Okay. This is the stuff that gets a lot of attention. It can do all these neat things, but there are also things like Revoicer. Revoicer are artificial intelligence voices. So I can say something like, in fact, let's take that text that I just generated rather than I'll say this as of my last update. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to go into Revoicer. And I'm going to say,
as of my last update in January 2022, OpenAI hasn't publicly disclosed the exact size.
Switch to a different character.
As of my last update in January 2022, OpenAI hasn't publicly. As of my last update in January 2022.
Let's go back to Tyler, but let's set his tone to be excited. Whoops, sorry. I'm going to set his tone to be excited.
As of my last update in January 2022, OpenAI hasn't publicly disclosed the exact size.
and there are a bunch of different voices from different parts of the world. I mean, I don't know what Estonian would sound like on here because I don't know anything about Estonian.
As of my last update in January 2022, OpenAI hasn't publicly disclosed the exact size.
We could go English Australian. Let's go with Willow. Willow, like from Buffy.
As of my last update in January 2022, OpenAI hasn't publicly disclosed the exact size.
Now, even perhaps more interesting than that. So let's before I started this, I went and copied something that I had written down, and I can say generate. Let's start with ChatGPT. This is a free chatbot that can generate an answer to almost any question it's asked, developed by OpenAI and largely funded by, yes, Microsoft. Microsoft is GPT-4 as the conversational brains behind the new Bing. Even if you aren't a big Microsoft fan, it's worth trying out Bing. It's free, is built on the open source Chromium browser, and it's nicely tied into GPT-4 through a handy sidebar you can access at any time. Okay, does that sound familiar? Does that sound like anybody you've ever heard before? No? No. That's because I trained it on my voice. So not only can you have AI voices generated, so we've got AI voice, and like, I don't know, to me, these sound pretty convincing. Like these sound like, good voices.
This is my last update in January 2022.
It's not bad, but of course, companies like ElevenLabs allow you to not only use, because they've got a whole bunch of other voices that you can use. See, like they've got tons of voices, just like Revoicer does, but ElevenLabs lets you synthesize your own voice as well. So now I did not give it a lot of text to work with. I gave it like, I don't know, I gave it probably less than what's there to work from. But the more information you give it, the longer the text file, or sorry, I should say the audio file of your voice that you give it, the more accurately it will it will do your voice if you're talking for something. So you could actually use this to generate an entire article or an entire video or something like this. Oh, and speaking of video, since I've got a couple more minutes, I'm going to show you one other cool thing. This is all about cool things today, by the way. So you can generate text, you can generate art, you can generate people's voices, you can generate music as well. I'm not going to get into music tonight, but let me show you something that ties a whole bunch of these things together. You ever wanted to make a cool YouTube video? Sure, you wanted to make a cool YouTube. Say, yes, I would love to make a cool YouTube video. So let's say create, and I'm going to say, I'm starting from scratch. Okay, this is something called Augie, which is from Augex Labs, which just got a huge investment from Dropbox, the company Dropbox, which is also, interestingly enough, getting into generative AI and artificial intelligence in a big way. By the way, if you can think of a big company out there somewhere, they're getting into artificial intelligence and generative AI. Just saying, okay? So I'm starting from scratch. Watch this. Let's go. The goal of the video is to, no, I'm going to say, tell a story. Let's go. The target audience is 18 to 24. Location of the audience is primarily, let's say, Northeast US. Northeast US. The tone is mysterious. Yes, indeed. What is the topic? It was a dark and stormy night when the Michigan user group got together to uncover a mystery. Let's go. All right, so I want to create a video. I want to create a captivating video. A target audience 18 to 24. It takes place. My audience is largely in the Northeast US. The tone is mysterious. What's the topic? So what this will do is it will use generative AI to create a script, a story. And now I can give it a story to begin with, but I'm telling it to create something here. Hopefully it doesn't take too long to create this. Typically it's not that bad.
While we're waiting, are there any questions that are out there?
Yes, while we're waiting. Because this will tie it all in together.
So is any of this, I mean, it almost must be, used commercially as, you know, in full entertainment, like just like actors and actresses were doing it? And is that out yet? I mean, it certainly could be.
It's out. It's under the surface. There are a lot of news sites out there at the moment that are actually starting to use generative AI to write their stories. This was before ChatGPT came out. This was already happening in financial and sports reporting. You probably could have guessed that one, because a lot of the stuff they cover is basically said in exactly the same way each time. Come on, you can do better than that. I've seen you work a lot faster than this.
A while back, I tried, this is a year and a half ago or so now, to have it put a picture of a friend of mine on a stage with a couple props, and it said it wouldn't do that because it would work with his photo or something like that. Are they still doing that? They still protecting you from me?
The short answer is it depends. There are people who are trying to create rules in place. Tell me a story about a group of tech people getting together to solve a mystery. Come on. Maybe it just hung for some strange reason. The short answer is, yeah, they do try to protect you from things like that, and it is one of the things that's a big concern. That doesn't mean that every company is doing it. That doesn't mean that all the rules are being followed. That doesn't mean that everybody is being 100% ethical about these things. This is obviously, I mean, if you've been following the news on this at all, you know it's a huge problem. You know it's a big area of concern. People are talking about things like the fair use doctrine, for instance. Am I allowed to use this material to be able to continue? Okay, so a lot of the models, the thing that you can do when you run a model locally, like, you know how I used Easy Diffusion on there? I can actually go to civitai.com, which I showed you there. And again, I'll share the links with you guys after this, like for tomorrow or something. I'll put the links together for all of this. If you go there, you'll find that there are models that are labeled NSFW. Okay, some of them are sexual in nature, some of them are violent in nature, and where if you try to get Bing to generate a picture that involves any amount of blood and gore, for instance, like a battlefield picture or something, it just won't do it, even though there might be legitimate reasons for doing that, right? Because you're telling that type of a story, or you're trying to create something like that. They're just not interested in that. Okay, they don't want to get into that. If you run something like Stable Diffusion locally, you can either use Stable Diffusion on its own, or get one of these LoRa's or one of these tuned models, and no one is going to stop you from generating whatever the heck it is you want. You remember I showed you GPT for all, which allowed you to run some of these large language models locally? Well, they're nowhere near as good as GPT-4, but they do have their uses. But one of the things that it does, of course, is that you're not blocked from doing anything. It will write whatever you want because you're the one. So I'm going to say select a voice, and I'm going to go with Aaron, North America, male adult.
Disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them.
Sure, let's do it. Hang on. So I'm going to say orientation. I'm going to say preview here. So what's happening here is this will allows you to create a video from start to finish using artificial intelligence. So now I can listen to a sample.
Once upon a time, in a land where tech marvel.
Sure, I'm willing to go with that. Let's go. Now, once your orientation, I'm going to do it so that it's just a landscape video, and I'm going to say next, and I'm going to say yes, you can pull stock clips, stock images, internet images if you want, Jiffy if you want, generate, sure, anything, use whatever. Next, and I have listened to my audio and I'm ready to make my Augie, and I go create. And now it's converting audio to text, and it will actually generate and pull out artwork to fit the video along the entire length of the whole thing. So this is, if you take all of this to its logical conclusion, and again, some of this stuff is still early on. Our AI-assisted video editor raised $3.1 million, so they're rather pleased about that today. This is a rather new company and a rather new product, but this is where this can all go. So I start from text generation, then I've got image generation, then I've got AI voice generation, and then I've got something that will not only do that, but pull from different sources and assemble an entire video without you having written a single darn thing about it. So if I go to my Augie here, take me to the editor, I don't care at the moment. And now if I click play.
Once upon a time, in a land where tech marvels lit up every corner, a group of brilliant minds converged with a shared mission. They were not just ordinary individuals, but masters of their craft, driven by an insatiable curiosity. United by their love for all things digital, they formed an unstoppable team, bound to unravel the enigma that lay before them. As they dove deep into the vast ocean of data, each keystroke was a step closer to the truth. With their synchronized brilliance, they unraveled mysteries that had stumped others for ages. It was a tale of relentless determination, where minds connected, innovation thrived, and the power of unity triumphed. And so, in this vast interconnected world, where technology linked souls from far and wide, the story of their triumph echoed through the digital realm, inspiring all, regardless of age or location, to believe in the power of teamwork and the magic of discovery.
Okay, so it generated a 57-second video literally from scratch. And there's an export button here. I can actually download the video. You'll see up at top there, I can download the video. You noticed it found a picture that it couldn't find. So I can click on there and it says to believe in the power of teamwork. So I'm going to say teamwork. Teamwork is what I'm looking for here, search. And okay, so let me go back here and I'm going to say
inspiring all, regardless of age or location, to believe in the power of teamwork and the magic of discovery.
So
that was funny.
So you can go like literally from start to finish, generate your text, generate your images, search the internet for content, create a story, put together a video. If you don't like this thing or that thing, they're inspiring all regardless of age. Like maybe, maybe I didn't like that one there. All ages search, and maybe I can change that last one there, and I can say sources. Let's go stock clips instead. Stock clips, that's right, and get rid of the animated GIFs. All ages. I don't know. I don't have a good picture I don't have a picture here that I like for all ages. Maybe it was better when I had the animated GIFs as well. Here, let's just go with that one for fun. Anyway, but it's just a matter of dropping something in. And of course, what you can do is you can go to the transcript, and you know how if I want a particular area to be longer, I could just join two areas here. I know how this works. I've done this before. Now, all of a sudden, I've gotten rid of one thing. I've gotten rid of the Simpsons clip, and inspiring all regardless of age, for teamwork is now one thing. So you can edit stuff like that. And then my library is things that you upload. And in fact, you'll notice that there are a couple of things that I uploaded there because I was experimenting with it myself. Like I did the freaking Hunger Games on this one. Anyway, download the video, and now we have a video which we can then upload to YouTube. We could click and upload it to YouTube, and off we go. So like I said, I wanted to show you a lot of cool things that you can do in generative AI and artificial intelligence today. It's a hell of a lot more than I can cover in 2 hours, but I sort of wanted to give you a feel across everything from text to images to voice to video, and I didn't even touch on music and other things. So I'll open it up to final questions here if you want, and I'm sure, I mean, it's 8:45, so it's kind of like time to leave almost, but are there any final questions before we wrap this up?
Come on, there's got to be someone out there.
It's quiet, too quiet. They've all gone home already.
I'm just amazed by it.
It's kind of mind-boggling. It really is. And I play with this like all the time. I experiment with this all the time. I use tools that I didn't even show you at all tonight, because I don't have the room to show you this in a couple of hours. But it's exciting, it's scary, and for me, it really does sort of make me not question, the value of humanity or anything like that, but it does actually make me wonder about how it is that we actually think, how we actually come up with things. We like to say that, well, the machine, for the longest time it was, well, AI won't truly be AI until it can do this. And then, of course, it could do that. Well, it won't be able to, it's not going to be intelligent until it's able to beat a grandmaster at chess. Well, it did that. Well, yeah, chess is, has a finite number of moves. But until it can beat a Go master, it won't be able to do that. And then the goalposts just keep getting moved and moved and moved all the time. And now we're at a point where any reasonable person has to be able to say that, yeah, the Turing test was passed a long time ago. So we need like a new Turing test, or we need another way to figure out what makes us special. And I think that that's something that, if I can leave it with that, I think that that's something that we all really do need to think about. We need to think about, what not just what we are, but what we can become. Because I think, to me, the reason this is really exciting is, first of all, I love the fact that there's a huge open source community that's building this stuff. I mean, I love that, Stable Diffusion, the Llama models, all these things, like there's tons of open source developers working on this stuff. So I find that exciting, and I find that positive because, of course, it's not just OpenAI that's doing this thing. And OpenAI is open only in name, as people like to say. But there are a lot of people working on this. And I think that this is the beginning of kind of a new partnership between, human beings and their machines. I think this is a way to make us more than we are, as opposed to lessen what we are. So I have a very positive outlook on all of this. And I hope you guys found this interesting, and I hope you find it exciting. And I hope it will get some of you to, get in there and try some of this stuff so that, you can build on that as well. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Any other questions?
I was thinking this may be a way that our brains are able to seemingly learn so many things, and yet we're so finite in our brains. Because a 2 gigabyte file, for example, is quite finite, and so is our brain. And yet we can learn and do so many things in a lifetime.
Yeah, well, it's all those associations and cross references and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a very exciting time. It's a scary time, but I err on the side of exciting.
I feel like I've got enough to start poking around. I have not visited the ChatGPT site. I've done nothing so far, but I've been like watching you here and a few other things, and I think I'm ready to jump in.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you want to jump in without spending any money up front, I like to think that we in the open source community have more or less, maybe less than more, I don't know, made peace with Microsoft, especially since the real evil empire is Apple.
Hey, wait a minute.
Potato. But if you just do the bing.com/chat, you'll have access to not only GPT-4, but also DALL-E 3. And that's a great way to just start farting around without spending any money. Now, keep in mind that both of them will, I believe Bing Chat, you're only allowed to have up to 20 interactions before it wants you to start over from new. So whereas if I've got my ChatGPT session, or my Poe session, I've got conversations and with Pi.ai, don't forget Pi. Again, I'll send you these links tomorrow, okay? Like I'll put together something that sort of covers a lot of what I did tonight, and I'll send this tomorrow so that, anybody who was here or who's here has the opportunity to try some of these things out for themselves and know how to get to all of these things. But Pi.ai is great fun. But the Poe things like Claude with its 100K, window makes it possible for you to have long conversations that stretch back over several days, weeks, months, that sort of thing. Whereas Bing will shut you down after 20 interactions.
That's the generative part of
that's correct.
You're
yes.
talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how many of these AI sites are there?
I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, initially there were like 2 or 3, and like every day I find another 4 or 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the biggies. Okay. In that list of links, I'm going to give you the big ones and let you go from there. But there are more all the time. That's the short answer. This is not going away anytime soon. And it's like literally this stuff changes every couple of days. It's virtually impossible to keep up with. So all I can do is invite you to, dip your feet in the water and start to get a feel for, how this stuff works. Because you really should know how it works. You really should learn how to take advantage of it. Even if it's in a limited capacity, even if it's just like I did, create a picture that, represents Canadian Thanksgiving that you can share with your family. It's worth it just for stuff like that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well,
so one of the things that has sort of intrigued me is I've heard about it writing programs, and sometimes they are way off. What about asking it to configure a computer and giving it parameters as, I want it to be quiet, but not terribly expensive, and I want it to be able to run Linux, and then expect it. Would it give me a configuration, and would it work if I bought all those parts?
Yeah. It's been done. I don't remember his name at the moment, but There's a YouTuber I know who actually did exactly that. He had the AI create a system for him, and he went out and bought the parts and put it together according to the specs, and has a nice gaming PC out of it. So absolutely, I mean, you can do it. And of course, if you use something that's more up to date, like ChatGPT notoriously was stuck in 2023, but if you use something that's more up to date, it'll actually find you stuff that's available out there. Like for instance, if I go back to, I mean, I don't want to hold everybody up for too much longer here, but if I wanted to buy a smartwatch, for instance, can you recommend, well, hell, I mean, I could just talk, but recommend a smartwatch for under $120 with some good reviews?
You betcha. There are tons of great smartwatches out there for under $120. Here are a few recommendations.
Now, see that
Apple Watch SE2.
now it gave me some good
recommendations,
recommendations, but obviously it doesn't know anything about the prices.
Right.
Watch. This smartwatch has a gorgeous AMOLED display and long battery life, plus a ton of health and fitness tracking features.
I'll just quieten her down here. But so obviously it doesn't know the prices, but it these are, good things. I mean, they're good watches, all of them, obviously, but they're definitely not under $120. My Amaze Fit is GTS 4 Mini is under $120. Actually, it's about $120. Now, I just tried Pi there, but there are probably better places to do this. I mean, the guy who did it used GPT-4 with web access to be able to configure his PC. So he wasn't using Pi, which is largely a conversational AI as opposed to, one that will code for you or build things for you. I didn't even go into Auto GPT, where GPT can teach GPT instances to do things and basically build on itself. That gets really scary, but that would take like a whole evening.
So I guess it'd be really fun to have go to Bing and have it configure a system that runs Linux, huh?
The only thing like I said, I recommend that you play with it. You'll get, and one of the joys of working with Poe as opposed to something else is different chatbots know different things, or are better trained on other things, and sometimes it's worthwhile knowing which one will do things better for you. Pi is probably the best conversational AI I've seen. If you just want something to play with and chat with, it's probably the best, and it can surf the internet. And it does know, like, it knows what today's, top news headlines are. I could say, what are the top news of the day? And it actually does know, like it is able to go to the internet and find that. But you won't know until you actually try different things for yourself.
Oh, look, we're set to withdraw from Afghanistan.
This is weird. It's actually, there must be something wrong with Pi at the moment, because it is typically right up to date.
Yeah.
It's a development model. Just be aware of that. The thing with Pi is literally meant to be a conversational model, and is meant to be, it's for playing. I mean, I like it for playing. I don't trust it for obviously real news, but oh, this is Claude. It probably doesn't know that either. But anyway, all right. So there you go.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Thank you very much for.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
taking the time.
Thank you. Yes, very
come
good.
to our humble little group yet again.
I'm walking away, I promise, but do go to freethinkeratlarge.com, subscribe. Like, when I post something, you'll know about it. Engage in the conversation, if you will. And if you're interested, I know that Craig can help you out on this. I know that Jim can help you out on that. But I do run a Discord server as well. If you want to chat with, my Discord server tends to focus on things like, there's Craig Maloney up there. There we go. The Free Thinkers at Large group tends to focus on all sorts of things. I mean, I go into AI art. There's a Cooking with Linux section, which is basically Linux and free software, 3D printing, VR, politics. I mean, I've got a bunch of channels talking about a bunch of different things. So feel free to join in.
Wow, thank you.